we can start. I would like to welcome you in the webinar that we are organizing as Digital Communication Network Global, which is an initiative that have started and supported from various organizations and actors, and we are more than happy to have representatives from the civil society with us. Digital Communication Network it is supported from Citizens Exchange's Office of US State Department. Also, it is supported from World Learning. In addition to that, we are we're a community regarding and related on issues of digital communication technologies. And we are more than happy to have you all here with us in a very interesting webinar in relation with Ukraine. So I will pass the floor to today's moderator, Aisha Dan, which is a member of the board of DCN Global, and also is an investigative journalist as well. Aisha, the floor is yours.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So Nikos and I wanted to have this webinar today to take all of you kind of beyond the headlines of what's happening in Ukraine. We know that there's an escalating confrontation. We doubtless all of us have been reading in major news outlets the posturing of Putin, Biden, NATO, etc., as to what the possible outcomes should be. But right now, we wanted to bring civil society experts, journalists, and people on the ground to give us their perspective on what's actually going on, what it feels like, especially with regards to disinformation, to cyber attacks, and to what civil society actors are doing and feeling right now in these days. As many of you know, since 2014, Ukraine has been in a way a testing ground for new forms of hybrid war, disinformation, and cyber attacks from Russia. I'm sure our speakers will tell us more about that. And so it's sort of important to us that we help our community to understand better what our friends and what our civil society leaders are experiencing right now, in Ukraine today. So with that, I'm going to tell you who's speaking, and then we'll go right into their presentations. With us today, we have Maxim Kyak, an expert of the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism, and a senior researcher of the Karas Institute of Political and Ethnic Studies. We have Tatiana Yakubovich, a senior producer at Radio Free Europe's Ukraine service. Diana Filimon, a global member of the DCN board. Anna Kovalenka, a security expert and a former MP and deputy head of the Office of the President in Ukraine. And Olga Yurkova, a journalist and co-founder of StopFake.org. So, Maxim, will you get us started?
Sure, I try. Thank you, Aisha. I hope you can hear me well. And thank you, by the way, for inviting me, for having me. I'm as a member of DCN. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today as a speaker. Currently I'm in Kiev, and basically there is no escalation so far now, but it doesn't mean that I don't have to prepare, obviously. But first of all, before I start, I would like to say a few words about the topic of today's webinar. So I understand that there is some kind of confusion regarding the terms, but to my opinion, we should name it or label it not as a crisis, but as an aggression, because crisis usually is something that refers to something in the country. But aggression, basically from Russia, sorry, but this is how it is. This is an aggression which is actually is still ongoing, and by the way, for almost 8 years. So my sphere of interests, besides other spheres of interest, of course, is countering the disinformation, but I would like to start with a bit another topic. I would like to start with general thoughts of Ukrainians, if I may. So, to my opinion, currently we have in Ukrainian society right now, we have a lot of unknowns in the Ukraine environment, a lot of unknowns. So people basically don't know what is happening. People are really terrified, but not that terrified, not that much, because like I said, Ukrainians are still suffering for almost 8 years, and they have become pretty much resilient. But still people are terrified. They don't know what is happening. They have a lack of information, and there is a vacuum of information in Ukraine as well. And probably some of you know, for sure Ukrainians know that we had a lack of information during 3 weeks when we had this winter holidays and Christmas holidays, and there was no official statement from Ukrainian government what actually is going on. And then we had some, by the way, yesterday we had the second statement of President Zelensky. Just a few days ago, we had the first statement, and he said that there is nothing happening. You don't have to panic. Please don't act emotionally, and so on. So everything is under control. Everything goes according to the plan. But actually, no one knows how the plan looks like. This is an issue. And what is even worse, that a few days after his first statement, an interview at the Washington Post appeared where he said to a foreign audience, one of the targets of Russian aggression might become Kharkiv, which is one of the cities in eastern Ukraine. And after, like, really, if some of you probably, or maybe all of you have seen the movie Don't Look Up, Netflix movie, and it's just reminding the same situation when people are called to not to look up. Instead of, we have don't panic, Ukrainians. So yes, to my opinion, vacuum of information leads to panic as well, and this vacuum basically can be used by an aggressor to spread its own malign narratives. For sure, in Ukraine we have problems with strategic communications, situation in Ukrainian media landscape, lack of trust by Ukrainian citizens in Ukrainian government. This is all obvious, but still this all is being used by an aggressor, by Russia. And Russia is not attacking only territories. Currently, Russia is attacking minds of Ukrainians, of Europeans, and is spreading lies and panic. And spreading panic is already a part of aggression, I have to say, just to eliminate a will to resist of Ukrainians. Probably some of you have heard about the very recent situation with fake bombs in schools in Ukraine. So we have like fake calls about Ukrainian schools that there are some bombs, but still those bombs were not found. We had a situation with huge cyber attack on governmental buildings just a few weeks ago. And actually we have all witnessed this, something like that, starting with 2014 during the Zapad 2021 military exercises, and so on and so on. But still the consequences of it might be very harmful for Ukrainian community, for Ukrainian citizens. It means that the aggressor is trying, an aggressor is trying to do is to say that, to make people not trust anyone, especially your government, to make them believe that there is no reliable source of information, and to make all the citizens left alone by themselves. So everyone is for himself. That will be really a big trouble for Ukraine. So to my opinion, together with a vacuum of information in Ukraine, we also have a vacuum of responsibility and leadership in Ukraine. And this is how civil society can be helpful. So it can become a source of this responsibility and leadership in Ukraine, civil society. Just like in 2014, it happened just the same. So Ukrainian civil society has to create a plan, what to do, a plan B, plan C, what to do in case of worst case scenario. Because nothing makes so calm and eliminates panic as a good and sufficient plan. For instance, representatives of civil society, of Ukrainian civil society, can help Ukrainian army, just like they did in 2014 and after. They can join army, or they can join territorial defense forces. They can organize tactical medicine courses for a broad audience. They can also organize courses in survival during military actions. They can spread information about territorial defense, how to join this territorial defense, because there is a lack of information about it in Ukrainian media. They can basically make society less polarized and more resilient. And here I would also like to emphasize on the role of religious organizations and diaspora organizations of Ukraine. They really are playing a huge role in countering Russian aggression. Also, civil society could launch a coordinated center, maybe international coordinating center of representatives of your countries, and also launch an international crisis center that would spread information about what is going on in Ukraine, that would deal with strategic communication, with public diplomacy. They could also, civil society, Ukrainian civil society, they could also publish articles, reports in foreign media about the current situation, just what I used to do and still doing. They can also, in case of the worst, bad scenario, they can also help to spread humanitarian aid, food, water, etc. Those things are really, really needed. And they should hope for better, but prepare for worse, because, as you know, civis pacem, and if you want peace, and you know the rest of this proverb. And for this, Ukraine would need an assistance from the international community and a strong voice of international community and strong stance. Thank you for your attention. I would spare some time, I guess, for potential questions. Thank you.
Maxime, thanks very much. We're actually going to go into the next speaker, and then we'll have questions later. But I think you outlined here maybe the broad challenges of disinformation in the current situation in Ukraine, namely that as some of us know, but maybe some of us are less familiar with, the point of disinformation and the point of the psychological war is not just to spread lies, which is what many people think disinformation is, but actually to isolate people, to spread panic and to spread chaos and fear, and not necessarily, as we've sort of talked about with our journalists and colleagues, it's not always very obvious how it works and the mechanisms behind it, but the result is a society that's divided and afraid, which I think you're getting at. So next, I want to bring in Tatiana, if you would. And Tatiana, can you present to us, can you tell us a bit about your situation, the day-to-day facts of it, and what your thoughts are about both disinformation and the psychological war at the present moment? Can't hear you. Can you?
Do you hear me?
We got you now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I work with the project which is called Donbas Realities. So my point of view is like a point of view of people from Eastern Ukraine, and how does this situation look for these people? On the other hand, they have already saw what war is, and maybe nothing new for them is in this situation, and something they say, please stop this empty talks. Why do we need this panic? We have solved this. But on the other hand, these people, they feel how it is when houses are ruined, when you need to leave your home because of war. So it is a very feeling situation for them. And talking about a situation in Kyiv and other cities that are located far from the front line, of course, there are two categories of people. Some of them who are close to this news, who work with this, who help army, they understand the situation. And of course, they are a bit afraid and they prepare for war. And other people are very calm, and they try not to think about this situation. Of course, we work a lot with Russian disinformation, and what it looks like for these 8 years. Mainly, they made a focus on false history, alternative history of the conflict. So they replaced the events from 2014 year and showed another history of the war. And the focus was on Ukraine, attacked peaceful people in eastern Ukraine. And now situation is a bit another, it changed, and the main point is on NATO, on United States, on Britain. So they talk about some so-called aggressive steps of NATO in Ukraine and try to show, for example, military help, not as defensive, but as plans for attacking Ukrainian eastern part. And as well, all Ukrainian narrative is the same, but on the first place, it is talk about NATO, about United States, and they show Ukraine like something little and very weak. And what do we see on the ground, on the latest events? I'll share my screen. Okay. Really, we see many movements, real military movements on the Ukrainian border in Russian territory and also in occupied territory. And looking at this information from New York Times, from Politico, Maxar Technologies, we gathered all these points on one map in Google. And you can see these military trainings on Russian territory, each of them, and also on occupied territory. It is not investigation, but it is a useful instrument to see all in one place and to find these satellite photos and some videos in social media where movements of military equipment is shown. Next, of course, it is important to see after investigations of conflict intelligence team and New York Times, they give a lot of information really. And we see now that really troops are allocated, not only technique, but troops allocated to the borders. So it is a military component. The next one, what it is important in informational part, I think we try to tell our audience about the prisoners in occupied territory of Donbass. It is a very complicated topic because it is hard to talk about it. People are in prisons and nothing new are happening with them. So when you do not have news, you stop talking about that. But it is a really terrible situation, and you can imagine some of them are more than 3 or 5 years imprisoned in occupied territories, and we do not really understand how to help these people. So we try to tell these stories, human stories. For example, recently the Russian-controlled forces showed a woman, Natalia Shila, she is a teacher on their TV, and we try to catch this information. It is little, but to show and tell more and more about these people and do not forget about them. There is a list of some of them, maybe about 30 people, but really according to State Security Service, there are more than 260 prisoners in non-controlled territory of Donbass. The next interesting point, it is, as Maxim said, analyzing of presidents and government statements in background of this alarm statements of United States. People in Ukraine now talk a lot about, is it okay to say, keep calm? Many activists in Ukraine, they think that Ukrainian president and government should more talk about how to prepare and what to do practically, but not keep calm. And we try to analyze it as we see through reaction of the audience. The text about preparation practical preparation to the war are very popular. Audience catch it at once and read about these tools, about how to behave when shelling started, and other practical things. They are very popular. Next is, it is our main goal, because we work for people in Donbass, and we try to speak about the problems of civilians in Donetsk and Lugansk, because it is easy to forget about it in the background of this big political news and war news. Mm-hmm. There are often important for them all questions about payments, social payments, pensions. These are a video when Ukrainian State Bank came to our studio, and people called from occupied territory a lot. They ask what will be with pensions, what will be with cards. And it is important that checkpoints are blocked for more than 1.5 years. And it is a very critical question because, for example, medicine or pills before the pandemic, they were carried from Ukrainian controlled territory a lot. And now when the checkpoints are blocked, people cannot get medicine, for example. And the last one, what is important, I think, it is focus on broadcasting. We regularly fix Russian TV broadcasting near the front line, and this situation doesn't change for 8 years a lot. And recently we checked this in small city of Toretsk, for example, near the front line, and on Ukrainian channel, where Ukrainian package of channels should be, we see again and again Russian channels. So these are the main problems we work with. And of course, if you ask what's going on, for 8 years, we could see what is hybrid war in local situation in Ukraine and in Donbass. And now we see hybrid war maybe in all the world, and how information, this misinformation works when, for example, NATO steps are shown like aggressive. So this alternative reality, we check it in huge masштаб.
Tatiana, just a question here. You were talking about how the disinformation and maybe the narrative and what people understand varies from east to west, as in Kiev, and when people aren't on the front lines, maybe they have a different understanding than when they're living in Donbass or not far from it. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
In some questions, there could be different understanding, but in general, I think people here in Kyiv, they understand what are the sides of the conflict and what are positions of Russia and United States. Maybe they have false information, a bit false, about people in non-controlled territories, because this territory is totally isolated. And frankly speaking, it is not so interesting for people here, their social problems. But geopolitical situation, it is plus minus clear for people here. And for so-called ORDLO, DNR and LNR, it is opposite situation. There is alternative understanding of geopolitical events.
So what you're talking about, for example, is Russia rewriting or Russian narratives rewriting the history of the war and emphasizing NATO as potentially aggressive and etc. Is that something that takes root mostly in Ukraine, or are these narratives that are mostly being promulgated in Donetsk and Luhansk?
Maybe for some part of Ukrainian audience, these narratives are also actual, because Russian channels are very strong, and you can see, you can use. There are many pro-Russian bloggers also, like Sharif, for example, And they are quite popular also in central Ukraine and free parts of Ukraine. So it is a threat also.
Okay. Thanks very much. Very interesting. I'm just going to move to Diana now, if that's all right.
Hi, everyone. And I was thinking while listening, and I saw a lot of familiar faces from Ukraine. And just a few months ago, we met in Odessa, and war was something that existed, but in a very low key and very abstract and very far away. And in just a few months, this all escalated in such a way. I'm an activist from Romania. I'm, of course, member of the DCN Global team and the board, and but I'm here in a double position of a citizen that is like 3 hours and a half away from the border with Ukraine. And second of all, as an activist who watches how this is developing, because it's very amazing. And I'm also a communication person. I have done this all my life. And I try to understand the means through which Russia is trying to communicate, or what are they trying to communicate, because just today I saw a poll made in Romania and everything just exploded as trust of Romanians in NATO, in the Western countries, in the US. I think everything grew with 10% in trust in the West and in NATO, and the distrust in Russia has increased a lot. So people are just amazed by what is happening. Romanians have a very heavy history with Russian tanks and Russian military. So when you see that in the TV, in the news, in the internet, it brings up very, very bad memories. And I'm coordinating a lot of projects focused on young people in Romania. And I was very curious to see how do they understand generations who were born less than 20 years ago, who have very few informations about what is the history of this region with Russia, just a few ideas from school, but it's something very far away from them. And I was amazed to see that they would say that they would go to war. They are willing to go as soldiers in war against an invasion of Russia, because they don't understand why in 2022, when the world has so many possibilities, we are talking about war. And there is no doubt in their mind that the only aggressor and the only cause for this crisis is Russia. So the damage that Russia is doing now in this region, stirring up very bad memories, or creating new bad memories for the younger generations with what they are doing, is incredible. I mean, it's just it's only bad things. So even the misinformation and disinformation in Romania regarding Russia is very low right now, because the public opinion is very strong. The aggressor is just one. There are no doubts, pretty much. I mean, not relevant ones. And we are discussing about possible immigrants from Ukraine forced by a possible invasion. We are talking about how we can contribute that. We are a NATO country. The number of military troops on the ground will definitely increase because of this threat. So Romania will be more and more important in the region from a military point of view, but also from a human point of view, because we will have to be there for the neighbors. And there is a discussion about what if in the worst case scenario, we will become once again neighbors with Russia. So that's something that's it's really frightening. And what I feel is that we feel that the Russians are opening a Pandora box with this, which you don't know where we'll end up, because it's a region with a lot of feelings, a lot of history, and they are stirring up with all these very complicated issues in the area. But the general feeling is of definitely support for the Ukrainians, 100% support for the Ukrainians. And I really hope that we will be able to work together in projects that will, contribute to building a better Ukraine without the fear of war always around the corner. And yeah, I think this is the most important. And I'm looking around, and I see so many young people, and I saw also in Ukraine so many people, young people involved, engaged in communities, and building a better country. So it's just amazing that we have to waste time now talking about war because of this situation. But what I can say is that the region is very shocked by the beginning of the year. We always say that the beginning of each year brought some very complicated situations. Each January brought something complicated. And in a very weird way, I feel that what's happening right now is a very unifying event for all pro-democracy forces, pro-NATO, members of NATO. So this is a very good opportunity for NATO to show that they are there when it's needed, and also for the European forces to be there, for European countries to show the level of the solidarity they want to get. So it's very interesting, and I really am curious in how we can do our best to improve and to make out of this crisis, to get out of this crisis as good as we can. Thank you, Aisha.
I think what you say about raising historical memories is actually quite interesting. Now we are 30 years, really, more than 30 years from the end of the Soviet Union and the thaw. And so it's become a generational memory, not as much of a present memory. And so it's then kind of interesting what you say, that it's still alive enough and still very much alive, such that all of the neighbors of Ukraine as well are paying very close attention to what's going on.
Yeah, it's a collective trauma, I would say, in the region, because we don't only have bad memories from 30 years ago, but we have bad memories from 1947 with Russian tanks in Romania manipulating the elections results. We have a lot of history together. In this region, everyone has history with each other, but the Russian aggression it pushes a very sensible button for everyone in the region. Because,
what about the younger generation in Romania? I mean, I'm 30. I was born in 91. So by the time I was listening to the news and paying attention, as in the United States, I suppose it was something that was already talked about as history. For the young people in Romania who you interact with, do you think they feel that way? And do you think they grasp kind of what could happen or what things were like?
I don't think they really have a real sense of how it would be like to be in a real conflict. It's something pretty abstract for every one of us who weren't directly involved there. But they really, they hate everything that stops your life. So they really hate the fact that a country wants to affect everyone's lives, not in a good way, to change your life just because they want to start a war. So when you have so many opportunities as a young person in these times, it's for them it's hard to conceive. Why would you do that as a country? Why? I mean, it's something that we did like 50 or 100 years ago. We're not doing it now. Mm-hmm. But yet I was amazed, as I said, that they have very strong feelings against an aggression of Russia. And they just react humanly to this situation. They don't need to read 10 history books. They really empathize a lot with the Ukrainian people and people their age. And so, yeah, it's amazing that this trauma, anyway, is generational, transgenerational trauma probably, but it's also about logic. Why would you do that? Why would the country do that? So they're very empathical with Ukrainians.
That's really well said, and maybe you captured it a little bit. Why would you stop life? Why would this happen? And I think that's an interesting thing to examine. I'm not a discussant here, but I remember being brought up very much with this story as history, and our favorite historian Francis Fukuyama writing, history ended and we are going to live in this Western world order. And 91, year I was born. And so it is sort of an awakening or a shattering or a discomfort with what we thought was going to happen in a bit of a way. You know, we just don't quite grasp the logic of it. At least I don't. I think you've captured it well, and maybe my generation a bit. All right, I have to keep, thank you very much. I have to keep going. Let's see. Yes, Olga, can you speak?
Yes, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you today. Let me share my presentation. And let me tell you about, okay, I can't share my presentation. Could you give me permission? Okay, thank you. Okay, let me tell you about the information and propaganda support of the Kremlin special operation to draw troops to the border with Ukraine. Maxim mentioned a bit about this, and I'll tell you a bit more in detail this. For the last 8 years in Ukraine, it's difficult to surprise anyone with the aggressiveness of Russian propaganda. In recent years, we have repeatedly heard promises to turn US into radioactive ashes or calls to destroy Ukraine as a state or so on. But the propaganda justification for this aggression has changed dramatically in the recent weeks. The ideological support for the attack on Ukraine within Russia itself has been going on since at least 2014. Kremlin propaganda portrays Ukraine as a fascist, neo-Nazi, quite an aggressive state. In previous years, the Kremlin media has created many false stories about Ukrainian fascists who allegedly extinguish the so-called people of Donbass, or genocide the Russian-speaking population, or rape old ladies, crucify young boys, and so on. At the same time, the propagandists try to combine their aggressive appeals with the image of a peaceful Russia, which allegedly does not interfere in the alleged civil war in Ukraine, although in fact it's Russia's armed aggression. And in July 2021, Russia's President Vladimir Putin published an article full of historical fakes. In it, he stated that Russians and Ukrainians are the one people and accused the Ukrainian government of justifying the state's independence by denying its past. In the Russian military, Putin's article has become mandatory for all soldiers to read. After that, in October 2021, Deputy Chairman of the Security Council and former Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev used an anti-Semitic rhetoric in an article for Russia's Kommersant to legitimize the current Ukrainian leadership as extremist, corrupted, and controlled from abroad. He writes that the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, allegedly forgot about his Jewish roots and began to serve the Nazis and at the same time the US. And Vladimir Putin said in December last year, once more, that the events in Donbass reminded him of genocide. Although, in fact, there is no sign of same by spokesman for Russian President Dmitry Peskov from the day before yesterday. Putin's ally, self-proclaimed President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, also says that Ukraine may attack Russia. And Russian President Vladimir Putin continued to push for a similar narrative in talks with US President Joe Biden in December. And the Kremlin reported that their leader told Biden that he was concerned, I quote, Kiev's provocative actions against Donbass. So Russia is communicating several messages that Ukraine actually wants to attack Donbass or Russia itself. Because the United States allegedly provokes it to do so and promotes Ukrainian hatred of Russia. And here another international aspect is added to the rhetoric. Against this background, Russia says that it's time to create a military alliance with China. In addition, there is another cross-cutting narrative that Russia has been promoting for the past few weeks. It is the idea that Ukraine has lost its subjectivity and has been betrayed by the US in connection with diplomatic efforts to deter Russia. There have been even several phrases such as they betrayed Afghanistan, so they will betray you. At the same time, no one pays attention to the fact that our situation is radically different from the Afghanistan situation. After all, Ukraine has its own army, and a large part of the population are ready to fight for our independence. If you look at how the rhetoric of propaganda changed over time, it becomes more and more aggressive. And the further away, the more the idea is advancing that Russia's military escalation is actually the result of panic in the West. And in particular, of pro-Russia, pro-Kremlin propaganda over the past week has fueled tensions on the Russian-Ukrainian border, spreading disinformation that Ukraine is allegedly preparing provocations, including a series of terrorist attacks in the occupied territories. It seems that this step is aimed at justifying a possible further offensive by Russia and demonizing the armed forces of Ukraine. So negotiations between Russia and the West have traditionally been accompanied by a stream of manipulation by pro-Russian forces, portraying Ukraine as an object of geopolitical trade that the United States allegedly uses to advance its interest. So it's not the first time that Kremlin puppets have spread the narrative of external governance and attacked Ukraine's sovereignty while sowing alarm over reports of betrayal by our partners. The attention of the international community and the media to the possible further Russian invasion of Ukraine has traditionally been positioned as artificial, but has also been used to explain the deteriorating economic situation in Ukraine. So the focus is on the insidious West that is undermining Ukraine, not on Russia's military expansion in Ukraine and on its borders and its ongoing efforts to destabilize the situation from within, such as the recent cyber attack on government websites, for example. So in short, in recent days, the rhetoric of Russian propaganda against NATO and Ukraine has become more and even more aggressive. This combined with unrealistic demands from Moscow increase the chances of possible escalation. So in Ukraine, we see some confusion in society because why is this happening? Social psychologists have studied in the last century that if there is an important topic, a topic that is literally about life and death, and there is no reliable information on this topic, the vacuum is filled with certain panic, as well as rumors and conspiracy theories. There are many psychological reasons for this. So people want to feel safe, people want to feel informed, people want to stand out, to brag sometimes, to splash out their emotional experiences, to get emotion in return. So there's just very simple way to fight rumors and panic. It's through clear government communication about what is happening and what to do in case of the particular developments. Such communication must take place through many channels, not just through, for example, such channel as President's speech In Ukraine, this communication was fragmented. At the same time, we would like to note the professionalism of our diplomats who communicate well about the current situation for our foreign partners and the media and other audiences. Unfortunately, we have only just now we have seen more or less active communication within the country. But historically, since 2014, civil society and independent media have taken over this function in Ukraine. In particular, organizations such as Stop Fake or VoxCheck refute fake news and disinformation and explain to people how propaganda and disinformation works in order to make them more resilient. Other organizations mentioned by my colleagues bring people together for informational resistance, such as national personal cybersecurity training, for example, and more. And a number of organizations are actively working in this field now, like Inform Napalm, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, Euromaidan Press, Ukraine World, Information Forces of Ukraine, and so on. And they also cooperate with each other, as well as with the media and other NGOs in order to raise awareness and publish materials that shed light on various aspects of what is happening. So the role of independent media, such as Text, Ukrainska Pravda, Liga.net, also cannot be ignored. It's very important because they explain in detail different aspects of possible developments and what to do in that or this case. To sum up, just given the extreme dynamism of this situation, of current situation, thanks to the efforts of the media and NGOs, the communication situation in Ukraine has improved significantly in a constructive way, but I still see a lot of room for improvement. Ukrainian civil society has been working for many years to combat disinformation on various fronts. It's also important because fronts from collecting data on Russia's military presence to introducing media literacy into the school curriculum. This fact plays an important role in strengthening our resilience to disinformation. So, although it's a slow and long-term process, but the situation is changing, and frank propaganda, which people might have believed 7 years ago, will no longer work in Ukraine now. So this does not mean that there is no need for certain rapid response actions, because all this works only in the complex. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Olga. I wanted to actually ask you, and thanks for a very interesting presentation. It's really, I think for some of us, quite shocking. You know, we've gone through anti-Semitism, the NATO betrayed Afghanistan, so they'll betray you. As you said, sowing alarm about possibility of Ukraine being abandoned, and then and beyond. I wanted to ask, do any of these stories, or which of these stories, get traction among people? Which do you see spreading on social media? Which do you think have maybe had success from the minds of the propagandists?
I think that it's my opinion that these messages has their own limited audience who are pro-Russian a bit, who are looking for this information, who they watch, for example, Nash TV channel, which is the main platform for pro-Russian propaganda in Ukraine now. And they also they are readers of anonymous Telegram channel who also promoting pro-Kremlin narratives. So I think that it's like quite small, but very this audience is small, but it trusts in this information sources very much. And I see another problem in the fact that we don't understand completely what is going on YouTube, because if people are looking for this pro-Russian information. They are reading and watching pro-Russian channels of information sources. But on YouTube, people don't look for this information because sometimes the algorithms of YouTube propose some like propagandist videos, and that's a problem because unfortunately there is a lot of room for improvement of our media literacy of our people. So I think this is the like weak link.
That oftentimes what we're saying is that the people who want this information and are susceptible to it are fairly siloed. They're in a bubble. But then there are some algorithms, or if you're a very good propagandist, there are some stories that'll get beyond the bubble, and then that begins to affect society more.
Yes, and they can start like think about this, and they can be vulnerable for these messages when they are not professionals in this field.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I want now to bring in Anna Kovalenka.
Hello. But I am not hear you right now. Maybe so. Oh, okay.
We hear you. Great to have you. Yes.
It's a real great presentation of everybody. I agree with Maxim that is not a Ukraine crisis. And I told you, this is a real Ukraine-Russia confrontation. And I think that's Russia real destroyed post Second World War, like security architecture in Europe. And now we live in pre-war period. And from my point, this is a question of time when it will happen. Like huge confrontation, and we real need to agree with the speakers, especially with Ola and another one, that we real need clear government communication to tell people how to be ready, and I think actually this real can make them calm. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to take part in this discussion, and would like to thank our foreign partners for their support of Ukraine in the confrontation with Russia, not only in terms of cyber, but actually we had very good expert in NATO is in office from Romania a few years ago, and he all time have a joke that's experience of Graf Dracula should help us make something with the corruption. But let's talk about cybersecurity. And Ms. Down asked me talk about this exactly. There we are in 2019, the government set out to create the state in a smartphone. What did they accomplish since then? The Ministry of Digital Transformation was created. In the same year, an app was created, the DIA portal launched in 2020, the State and I, in which digital documents were given the same status as a paper document. There is a decree on the Cabinet of Ministry to this effect, but does not always work in the practice. Actually, it is non-commercial, and also you to register a business and sole proprietorship online by taxes, pay taxes, sorry, and file declarations. And there is an ambitious plan to transfer 100% of public services to the DIA by 2024. Another thing that the government established deputies for digital transformation in the ministries and the regional state administration. That is their efficiency and authority a good question, and in practice it's all depend on the individual of this person. The Special Communication Service, the Security Service, Defense Ministry, and the General Staff and the Cyber Police all share responsibility for cybersecurity. They used to be concerned about the duplication of function, but this has been solved at the working level. The new Bureau of Economic Security has raised this issue again, and there is no consensus yet on how to deal with economic crimes in cyber. whatever, to leave this with the police or hand it over to the BEP, like Bureau of Economy and Security. Conditional coordination occurs through the National Security Council apparat. Officially, 20 people work there, around of 20. Actually, exactly on a coordination, this around 10. And the system of situational center under the SBU is like MICP-UA and the State Special Communication Service. There is also an interesting initiative to unite critical infrastructure, business and security forces under Naftogaz. But this is far from analogic like NCTFA or NCCIC. People from Europe and United States should understand me. The issue of efficiency also lies in the context of real goals and priority of state interest over the business. Of course, there is also a legislative framework, the law of national security on the basics of ensuring the cybersecurity of Ukraine, the law of Ukraine on protection information and military technical cooperation, on the protection of personal data, on electronic communication, the decree of the president of cybersecurity strategy and the plan for this implementation, the priority of the government's action are also defined in this direction, the concept of counterintelligence and the Council of Europe Convention on Cybercrime, the Single Digital Market Strategy, NIS Directive, etc., have all been adopted. As always in matters of cybersecurity, there is a lack of high quality human and technical resources, coordination and financial resources, but it's difficult to coordinate those who do not want to coordinate. And these are very important things for the country, especially in the context of the constant aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. You can remember 2014, just you mentioned probably, the publication of fails data on the presidential elections in Ukraine. In 2015, hacker attack on the...
We go back to that, 2014. I think you know more than we do. Attack on presidential election data, was it?
Yes, it's just they make a post on a website of our Central Election Commission that on president's election won Yarosh, do you remember, from right sector? And everybody like become funny, but it was not funny. It was a huge threat to our system. And after that, in 2015, a hacker attack on the regional energy plant. It's like 300,000 people were without electricity for several days. Include like Borisov. I didn't hear you actually.
Yeah, that was in winter. That was Prekarpattia Oblenergo, right? That was late 2015.
Then 2016, large-scale attack on the Minister of Finance and the Treasury. You know that for 2 days all our financial system like blocked. In 2017, ME doc program update system was compromised, and then the system of robots of media, banks, privates, and installations was violated by, no, you understand me. And everyone remembers like this attack, PETA, non-PETA virus. And today, actually, Ukraine is very active in digitalization, but the issue of security does not always keep pace with this process. And this was confirmed just a few days ago on January 14, 2022, an attack on more than, like in the press, 70 plus, they are right, 7, okay. Government website. It's difficult to disclose some details now. The investigation is underway. One of the versions that appeared in the media and is being investigated by the security service concerns the exploitation by hackers of specific content management system. Also, the developer itself blames the state authorities for not using their products website properly without concluding further additional contract for maintenance and protection. In 2018, the European Union created the General Data Protection Regulation. The transition lasted almost 2 years. There is still a lot of work for Ukraine in this regard, and I believe that we will do something with this. We have many systems that have not yet been subjected to massive cyber attacks, but this doesn't mean that they are well protected. Ukraine has a lot of systematic, you probably see this in the media, work to do with, for example, with the eHealth. There were several stories in the media about how people are being booked for doctor appointments without their knowledge. And there was a rumor that Ukraine plans to switch to partially electronic elections soon, which in the current state of affairs with the cybersecurity would clearly be very dangerous, actually. And, you know, Ukraine is actually confrontation Russia's cyber aggression. We are defying it and gaining interesting experience. We are ready to share this experience with the foreign partners to make the world a little safer place.
Yeah, I think it's, as someone from the US, it's pretty striking actually. And I remember reading about, you know, an example you brought up, which is the 2015 cyber attack where, you know, a power station in a cold and mountainous region couldn't provide electricity in the dead of winter. You're right that Ukraine has a kind of a lot to teach. I think another interesting point you brought up that I just want to highlight is that if I'm understanding you correctly, Ukraine has done a lot of work in putting government services online and on your smartphone.
In the end of 2021, there was 72 special services, government services, which they provide through the DIA. And now it's around 12 million of people use it on their smartphone. But
so your government, yeah.
Yes, but this cyber attack show that system not protect well. And now they will pay attention more on cyber, but it's like better think about this before you provide this like app for 12 million of people.
What happened during that cyber attack? Was it just that I can't file my taxes anymore from my phone, or is there something? I mean, what was it?
Actually, it was a cyber attack on many kind of different websites, government, and it's like StatTouch, the DIA and security service. They ask Ministry of Digital Transformation switch off DIA for
digital security.
Yeah,
digital information.
And they did it. That means that's not like they have no some destroyed result. Now it's work, but it was a problem.
Yeah,
and there might be the problem that a lot of data of Ukrainians have been stolen. So it's not proven so far. So officials say that it's fine, but there is some kind of contradictory information that probably this data could be stolen, and who knows what will happen with it. So, and there will be a lot of data from phones, from laptops of Ukrainians, so on.
Thanks, Maxime.
But there's like investigations still go on, and I think maybe last conclusions we will see soon, I hope.
I also wanted to ask you, and I think Maxime mentioned it as well, Anna, but it's not just, there's been cyber attacks, but there's also been kind of low-level bomb threats against schools and
yes, people. It's interesting. They use like this app, social media services, Telegram, and they make all our security system like be ready, try to find some bombs or something like that. Last one, they took some guys who real was connect to FSB through the Telegram.
But they usually they use, you know, kind of students, those who are lacking some money, so they just find them in the Telegram and say, well, would you like to earn some money? And then you do this and that, call to police and say that this school has a bomb. So this is how it is. And one of the witnesses said that yes, they are from FSB. So that's all for me. From FSB Russia, I mean.
Yeah, this is of course coming from Russia, but another, we have some proofs. But another thing what's interesting, we have this like traditional and a lot of jokes about Vovочка and bombs in a school. And I think some huge parts, this is still coordinated from our enemy, but maybe sometimes I think children can do this themselves.
That's true. But so what we're talking about, and maybe what it's not just disinformation, which is sort of psychologically rough on people as they go about their lives, but also structural attacks on the fabric of day-to-day living that have been a threat in the past and that can continue to be a threat, and that even if the Ukrainian government takes measures to secure itself and its services, Anna, you probably anticipate that there will be continued structural attacks from Russian actors in Ukraine as we go on.
Yes, and that's why I have a point. Like we all time on this front line, and all our government services should like work more on coordination on some issue, create, I don't know, cyber office or something like this. But they not pay so many attention on this, and even all the structure, they have some competitions between themselves. That's who will first go to the president and will tell him like what happened and how they fight with this and all of this stuff. But actually, we need more like coordination inside the country, and of course, a lot of crimes we just how to say. Found truth just because we have good coordination and cooperation with our like Sweden partners, US, Great Britain, Germany, and all of this. Swiss.
Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation. It's really informative, and to many of us, we don't really grasp how much of a threat this is in society. So I appreciate you talking about it. I wanted now to kind of start a discussion. I think, Nikos, I'm bringing you in as well. So, you know, we envisioned this panel. We're I think the subjects that have come out that are kind of novel or that maybe capture what we're seeing is disinformation and evolving disinformation, and disinformation that may be less about sowing lies and more about creating chaos and panic and making people feel isolated and alone. The response of society and how much that connects to the personal history of people who've lived through what's gone on in the region. And then different, what's called the hybrid war, which is still going on 8 years after it started. But what we call Ukraine is kind of a ground zero for different models of aggression that you know make it not just a war kind of fought on the border, but a psychological kind of torture or a psychological pain that exists and that people have to live with and grow resilient against day by day. So Nikos?
Yes, thank you. I just want to make a really short question, and then we should actually open up the floor to the rest of the participants. There are already a question in the chat room, but feel free actually to ask questions. I would like to ask all the participants, some of you, Olga and Diana as well, and Tatiana, described a bit or talked about it actually. I would like to actually mention, to discuss further, what do you think and what is the role that civic society organizations can play in an environment like that, tackling disinformation, addressing these concerns that Diana spoke about in the younger generation, or even equipping or building up a society resilience? Thank you. Very interesting presentations. I forgot to mention, but
I can just briefly start before my colleagues I think the civil society's main role is community builder. Either it's a community of 5 people or 500 people. So I think the important thing is in this period is first of all to rally our communities, to talk to them about the subject. I haven't seen in a very, very long time so much interest in discussing this subject like now. The Ukrainian issue is people want to talk about it, want to understand more, want to know what they can do, how they can help. Definitely, it's very important to organize ourselves and to, even if we hope for the best, prepare for the worst, like they say. So we need to prepare ourselves in case something happens, how we will react, how we can support. For Ukraine, it's a completely different scenery, so they need to prepare for various possibilities. For the neighboring countries, I would say the important thing is to prepare. First of all, to make sure that the people get the right information, no matter what happens in Ukraine. People need to be well informed, to be very aware of any possible disinformation that will come up in a way or another. Second of all, to be ready to help in a human way if there is a need of people who will move from Ukraine to the neighboring countries, to Romania. Exactly, we need to think how we can do that, how we can help. Third of all, we get this is a way of helping. We are together, we are discussing, we are listening to how it feels for the people in Ukraine, we are sharing our thoughts and exchanging ideas. But yeah, so I think the most important thing, the most important feature of civic society right now is to bring people together and to build communities prepared for whatever else comes. Thank you.
May I add some words? Talking about disinformation, I think first thing there are strong and professional NGOs in Ukraine who can work with disinformation and does it well, as Stop Fake, as you saw, as a Detector of Media. It is online journal about medias. And other. And what to do? I think first, Ukrainian activists should think about how to deliver information, how to go to modern platforms like YouTube or TikTok and to place their information, because you can't stop Russian powerful information, because it is big money and they spend a lot of money to provide Western audience with this information. But we should conquer not only big media like old-fashioned media as we are, but also activists and bloggers, and it may be even more popular. And the second thing, I think we need to work with platforms, because as a colleague from Stop Fake mentioned, these situations with blocking some content in YouTube. Maybe you remember several months ago, a Russian channel was blocked in Germany. And I was surprised that they were blocked for disinformation in COVID topic, but not for much disinformation about human rights in occupied Donbass or Crimea. I was shocked with this. And I think we need to talk, and NGOs need to talk with platforms, YouTube, Facebook, about how to deal with it. Thank you.
If I may just add second, you know, we have this interesting tradition since actually 2014, when government bodies sometimes don't work or don't do something enough for protection or whatever, and NGOs can replace their work and try to do something. But this is not good, Varen. I think everybody with me will be agree on that. But you should know, if something happen on a bad way, our NGOs will be very active, very support, and all of this stuff. And other things, I think it's very workful, like all these watchdog organizations and all this initiative like Stop Fake, Donbass Rally, and all of the things, because this is about resilience and about trust. Sometimes people not trust to media or to government, but they trust to volunteer, for example, and people who really try to do something in a good way.
May I add something? Just to add a bit, some perspective, civil society has done a lot in Ukraine. In fact, in 2014, it replaced the state in many respects. But there are things that no NGO can do. For example, organize clear communication, like government communication. In addition, this is not very good, I think, when in the 8th year of the war, NGOs have to take on some functions of the state. So I would say that the ideal option is when the state cooperates with NGOs, with civil society, relying on them in matters of their competence, and it's like a synergy. This is also good for trust, I think, because there will be more public trust in such a tandem.
Agree with Olga.
And I think we make some steps on this path now, but I think not very quickly.
If I may,
Yes.
just 1 minute. Well, I think regarding disinformation, countering disinformation, I have a bit another point of view. I think it's really few of time right now because it should have been done earlier. Actually, it was done. It was done a lot. Was made a lot, like blocking Russian social media, social networks, etc. But if I may, I would say that civil society doesn't have borders. So I would emphasize on several things which Ukrainian civil society would need from the world. And to my opinion, those are the following. So if we say about cybersecurity, for sure we would need help from cyber specialists and from IT specialists all over the world. Just like Georgia actually did in 2008, they just asked for help of Estonian cybersecurity specialists, and they helped basically to Georgia when Russia made an aggression against Georgia. What also could be helpful is psychological mental help from European, psychologists. Would also I actually pointed out also courses in tactical medicine courses. Basically, Lithuanians, Estonians have been doing it for long. As far as I know, they have been doing it since 2014. I'm not sure about today. And also, well, I'm not a specialist in survival during war, but I think that, for instance, walkie-talkies could be also useful. I mean, if internet will be shut down, if phones will be shut down, I think walkie-talkies would be very useful for people, not just for civil society representatives. Also, might be useful power banks which are dealing with solar battery, to my mind. And so far, yes, those things are really important. And I also mentioned water, food, other supplies, hygiene tools, and so on. But to conclude, I would say that no to panic, yes to resilience. Just I read the very recent news that USA is saying that US citizens have to immediately leave Ukraine, which is kind of bad news, but still, I think that Ukrainians are quite resilient, and we will win. Thank you.
Thanks, Maxim. Thank you. Diana, and then let's take questions. If you have a question and you're on the floor, I emphasize questions, then please write them to us in the chat. In the meantime, Diana, what would you say?
Nothing to add to what I've already said. I think we firstly need to listen to the needs of the civil society in Ukraine and just adapt to see how we can help, like practical things, as Maxim said before, walkie-talkies. Yeah, I think even if it sounds like something small, we really should think about crisis communication, and if internet fails, then yeah, we have to turn back to older methods of communicating. But it sounds yeah, it still sounds incredible that we are talking about this in 2022 about how to communicate in case a war happens. But this is the situation. So yeah, we should listen and help. I would really be very much afraid for the civil society in other countries other than Ukraine to say they understand what Ukraine needs, not listening to them. So I think this is the first step, and see how we can contribute and start from here.
There is a question in the chat room from Andy Bora. Andy is a journalist, and he asks about disinformation. We would like to have your thoughts about it.
To Olga, I believe.
Yes.
Right.
But if anyone else wants to comment as well, please feel free. I mean,
Olga asked, oh, sorry.
Oh, please.
No, Andy asks Olga if people are using StopFake, if they get informed through StopFake, if StopFake works, and how far it works to combat disinformation on a social level.
I think so. StopFake is working in Ukraine has been working in Ukraine for 8 years now, from the 2nd of March of 2014, and yes, and we not just debunk fake news, we do this, and we communicate with different medias. We have the digest on YouTube. We also have like programs or digests on different Ukrainian media, such as Radio Free Liberty, for example, and some others, some local media. So we reach some local audiences, we reach audiences of the national media, the national level, and one of the most, I think, one of the most important directions of our work is informing the policymakers and decision makers. So it is, I think, it's one of the most important what we do. We document like Russia's disinformation. We are the only project working exactly with Russian propaganda and Russian disinformation. So we have like an archive of this propaganda, and it's very good that we have a lot of occasions to inform the decision makers, and they take into account our findings in their decisions. We know this. I can bring some example, but we can. I think we don't have a lot of time. But for example, it was. There is a resolution of European Parliament in 2016 when EU Parliament and about Russian propaganda, and they took into account our information. So we also conduct training on different aspects of fact-checking, disinformation resilience, and so on and so forth for different audiences, from students to diplomats. And we also cooperate with different NGOs and as well as state bodies for counter.
I don't know, can you hear me? Is it possible?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I got to Professor Niga. Thank you for reminding to the audience the questions that I make. Sorry that I interrupt like this, but I would like more precise answer from you, Olga. And thank you for the job that you have done till now, because I used to work as a fact-checking journalist in Albania too, and that's why I'm aware of StopFake in Ukraine. But my question is, how can this society right now, this media, can help in this kind of situation? It's like spread wide within the country. Are the people aware of Stop Fake, and can they get the real information from it?
You know, Andy, I used to work as the editor for the Kyiv Post, for example, and I know a lot of media outlets, including Kyiv Post in Ukraine, would feature and recycle Stop Fake's videos. And so at least that's one perspective here, in addition to Olga's. I think she's right in saying that they've had great success in terms of the amount of penetration in society, maybe more than, you know, most fact-checking organizations anywhere else I've seen.
And also the one more, maybe just one one more aspect of our work is cooperating with with Facebook in Ukraine as independent fact checkers. We and other fact checking organization called VoxCheck are independent fact checkers who can mark news and posts on Facebook and Instagram as false or manipulative. So I think it's also the significant impact. For example, in the context of COVID pandemic, which is also going on despite the situation at Ukraine. So yes, a lot of work, a lot of aspects.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Ayesha. Yeah.
And I made a question there, if you have been threatened, but hope you don't get threatened.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you very much for your question. Other questions, I discussed with Nikos ahead of time, and you know, we believe that there's a lot of people trying to sow chaos and fear in Ukraine right now. That's a main goal, as we know, of Russian propaganda and disinformation, is not just to spread lies, but to make people feel isolated and alone and turned against each other. And so for that reason, I think we are a little bit hesitant to take questions on like, will there be a genocide? What should we do if there's a war? Because, you know, that is not questions our speakers can answer, nor we can answer. And
yes, and the most and some of these concerns we understand the logic, etc. But we wanted actually us to bring here the perspective of the civil society, because this is what it is missing. That's why we wanted also to expand it broader. I think that some of these ideas, for example, as it has been mentioned before, Maxim or from Mr. Miller regarding, or other people as well, or from Michael as well, from Mr. Vanderpool, they're very good ones, and it would be taken into consideration. But let's stick on the civil society perspective, because we think, and this is how we actually organized this webinar, we think that the civil society perspective, sometimes it is left behind from mainstream media or big media. So, and because we're reaching at the end of this webinar, we just want to let you know that it will be followed for other webinars as well. If you have like kind of a final question for our speaker. Okay.
Do we have final questions, anyone?
Okay, so we would like to thank you all. As it has been mentioned before, this webinar is organized from a Digital Communication Network, a global network that tries to address and current issues regarding digital technologies, and working a lot on a grassroots level with civil society organizations. Our work, it has been supported from Citizens and Exchange Office of State Department, whom we thank, and also World Learning. And mostly we would like to thank the participants and especially our speakers. Maxim, Tatiana, Diana, Olga, Anna, thank you very much for being today with us, and an applause to our excellent coordinator as well. Aisha, thank you as well.
Thanks, Nikos. Thanks to all of you who asked questions, and we we really appreciate everyone who came. You know, this is such a difficult time right now for Ukraine, and just the fact of having this discussion and how many people showed up and your engagement is, I think, really encouraging. Thanks to our speakers for your time. Thanks for everyone for being here, and welcome to the next one.
Thanks,
Thank you
Aisha.
very much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Have a
Take
nice
care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.